turning a bowl, tool of choice is the bowl gouge. It'll make 95% of the cuts from start to finish. It can be a little intimidating to start out with. I'll show you some easy steps to sharpen it right and get flawless results when cutting. Whether or not this tool is straight from the manufacturer or one that's been sitting on the tool rack, I find it useful to sharpen it with a fingernail profile. I'll show you some easy steps to sharpen it to a fingernail profile. The first step is to establish the bevel angle on the end of the tool. That's the angle ground right here on the end of the tool, and that's about 60 to 80 degrees. I've set up the grinder on the tool rest to give me a 60 to 80 degree bevel, and I've just eyeballed that. Feel free to use a measuring device if necessary. Keep the tool at a 90 degree angle to the wheel with the flute facing straight up, and just push the tool straight into the wheel. Not a lot of pressure, let the wheel do the grinding. That looks excellent. I've produced a bevel that's at least 1/8 of an inch long, about an 80 degree bevel. It extends all the way from the very center of the flute down to the bottom of the tool. It's exactly what I'm looking for. That's step one. Now for step two, which is to produce a 45 degree wing angle. To do that, I'm going to readjust the tool rest on the grinder to approximately a flat tool rest or a 0 degree angle. To produce that 45 degree wing angle, I'm going to lay the tool over on its side with the flutes facing in towards the grinding wheel. I'm going to lay the tool at about a 45 degree angle to the grinding wheel. I've just eyeballed this. If you find it necessary to measure it, do so. Then I'm just going to slide the tool back and forth across the grinding wheel, grinding away the top of those wings at about a 45 degree angle. You may find it necessary to dress the wheel as you're grinding, just to keep the face of it free of any steel particles that embed in the surface. This allows the wheel to cut cooler and faster. And that's a perfect stopping point. That's the point where my 45 degree wing angle met my 60 to 80 degree bevel angle, and they meet at the center bottom of the flute right here. Although it looks a little strange, the extra steel here, we're going to remove that next to create a single faceted bevel from tip to wing. It'll be a perfect fingernail grind. Now I like to just remove some of this excess steel free-handedly on the grinder. There's not a lot of rhyme or reason to what I'm doing. I'm just laying it on the wheel and rolling it back and forth, just removing some of that excess steel. Here you can see I've removed a good portion of it from the right hand side and none to the left. I'll simply flip the tool over, remove the steel from this side. But I just removed a lot of this excess steel right here from this corner. Here I've removed most of the excess steel from both sides. I'm ready to use the vari grind attachment. We'll use the vari grind attachment to produce a consistent, uniform bevel each time we return to the grinder. To use the jig, insert the tool through these two holes in the jig, with the flute facing up towards the handle of the jig. and let the tool protrude about 1 3/4 inches from the face of the jig. To keep this the same each time, I've set up a gauge block, drilling a hole to 1 3/4 inches to ensure the same protrusion each time. Next, I'll adjust the angle of the pivot arm. I adjust the angle of my pivot arm approximately parallel to the outside of the jig. I've made scribe marks on my jig so I can repeat this each time I return to this tool. I'll then remove the tool rest and use the V-arm. The V-arm will form a pivot point for the arm of the vari grind to pivot against on the grinding wheel. I adjust the length of the V-arm so that the bevel on the end of the gouge matches the bevel on the end of the tool against the grinding wheel. Once the bevel matches, I like to color the end of the bevel with a permanent marker, turn the grinder on, and just touch the tool to the grinding wheel. You can pull the tool away and easily check your progress. You can see that I'm grinding the full length of the bevel, which means that I've matched my settings. At this point, I should be ready to sharpen. Simply place the tool back in the V-arm to create a pivot point, lay the tool against the grinding wheel, and roll the tool on its side. Keep the tool rolling at all times to prevent creating a flat spot on the bevel. Stop and check your progress often. I'm looking for a clear, uniform bevel from tip to wing without any visible edge. The right side looks good. I'll simply flip the tool over and work on the left. Now we have a sharp edge with no visible edge, smooth, single-faceted bevel from my bevel angle to my wing angle, smooth and consistent on both sides of the tool. Once the tool is ground to a fingernail profile, it's important to note the angle of the pivot arm. Note this on the jig for future reference. When the tool becomes dull, to resharpen, you'll return to this setting, protrude the gouge from the jig that same distance, 1 3/4 inches, using a gauge block, as well as adjusting the length of the V-arm to match the bevel on the end of the tool. It won't be necessary to reestablish the bevel angle or the wing angle once you've done that initially. The jig will maintain these for you. Sharpening the tool will simply be a pass to the right, to the left, and back to center. With the tool sharp, ready to start turning a bowl.